I think inspectors can access any document and anything they want in our companies. I don't think there's a problem there at all. The problem that I see is people getting access to the information for the wrong reasons.
John McKenna there, president of the Air Transport Association of Canada, earlier on the show defending some of the industry's attempts to block the release of safety inspection records to the public. Porter Airlines has launched a legal action to seal those records, and until the matter is settled in federal court, no reports will be released under the Access to Information Act. And it raises this question: is the airline industry justified in withholding records to protect their commercial interests, or does the public deserve full access to inspection safety reports when their own safety may be at stake? Joining me now from Calgary, Michelle Rempel, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Environment Minister. In Toronto, Dan Harris, the NDP's Deputy Industry Critic. And in Charlottetown, Wayne Easter, the Liberal International Trade Critic. All of you, good to see you here, and we'll see you back here on Parliament Hill next week. Michelle Rempel, let me start with you, because back in 2007, Transport Canada told MPs at the Transport Committee, I've got the transcript right here, that the department would make airline inspection records available through the Access to Information Act, as long as it doesn't harm commercial interests. Now the Porter Airlines court case says we've got to shut that down because they want total ban on that from the public. Should the public have access to these records?
Well, first of all, commenting on the Porter Airline case, federal court rules, I can't comment on that because it is a matter that's in front of the court right now. But also, as someone who has a vested interest in airline safety, who spends, several hours a week in an airplane, obviously Canadians want to ensure that our airlines have a high standard of safety. That's why we've implemented our safety management system. It's now an international standard. And, frankly, Evan, 2011 saw one of the lowest incidences of airline accidents in history. And we've also seen airline accidents decrease while air traffic has increased over the last decade. We've maintained the levels of airline inspectors. This is a fact. I know my opposition colleagues have probably been misbriefed on that. But, I think that we've got an excellent standard of inspections both in the air and the...
But this isn't about the record so much as if, for example, if something were to happen, we wouldn't have access to the access to information to see the report. We'd have to wait for a safety report. Should the public, look, in the case of beef issues or car issues, the public would have the right to get access to information. It was promised at the Transport Committee. Do you think that promise ought to remain fulfilled?
Well, as you mentioned earlier in your statement, this is a matter that's before the courts right now, so we have to make sure that that goes through its due process before commenting. But I think, the matter that's at hand here that your viewership is probably interested in is whether or not it's safe to fly in Canada, and all records show that it is. Obviously we've got rigorous processes in place to make sure that we have those inspections taking place, that we've got standards outside of our inspectors on these planes, including the safety management system, which is really the subject of what you're talking about today, which is now an international standard. So I think that that's something that we need to focus on here, right, and let the court case play out.
Let me get Dan Harris in there, because we had Daniel Slunder, the president of the Canadian Federal Pilots Association, on. He argues that releasing these to the public would actually make things safer. He thinks the transparency actually increases safety. Where does the NDP stand on this?
Well, Evan, you really wonder where that open and transparent government went. Because, this is a lack of transparency. And Michelle mentioned that, all the safety reports show that they're safe. Well, how do we know that if we don't have access to the reports? The safety management system that's been put in place is being torn apart at the seams. We've got 100 inspectors that CATSA still has yet to hire. So we're out of what's supposed to be about 900 inspectors, we're 100 inspectors short. And furthermore, the safety management system, what it does now is it has Transport Canada inspectors inspecting paperwork, not inspecting planes. In 2010 and 11, only 30% of Canada's fleet of about 34,000 planes were actually inspected by Transport Canada. The rest are being done internally, and now the airlines are saying that they don't want that to be exposed to the public. We think that it should be.
So this is the safety management system critique that goes even farther back. Wayne Easter, where are you on this in terms of should these be made public, and is there too much reliance on the self-regulating system here?
Of course they should be made public, and of course there's too much self-reliance on the companies and the industry managing it itself. I mean, Ms. Rempel is talking about that last year was good in terms of safety, and that's true. But you only have to have one incident in the aviation industry, and that's gone astray. The safety management system that is talked about isn't all it's talked up to be. Inspectors are not there's not actually people on the ground inspecting the planes. What they're doing is inspecting the paperwork. And you know, you can't have it both ways. In fact, this government itself is fairly weak on providing access to information and transparency in its own right, so I can understand it being in a difficult position challenging the aviation industry to be transparent.
I should just keep in mind, and keep going there, but it was the Liberal government under Paul Martin in 2005 that amended the aviation regulations to implement the safety management system.
And I understand that. I understand that. But what we're seeing more and more in other industries, and the self-regulation in the food industry certainly isn't all it ended up being cracked up to be. But I want to make one point in terms of aviation, and that is the retired Justice Mashansky, I think I might have not have pronounced that right, who did the Dryden inquiry. He said within the last year or so that the industry policing itself would be akin to putting the fox in charge of this chicken coop. And that's where we're at. Look, the reason, you know, one of the safest modes of travel, of any, is flying. And it has been that way because we've always had inspections by inspectors of planes, and that's why it's ended up safe. So, you know, a company has to look at its investors, what the stock market's doing, and they can end up
this is in addition to the inspectors that we already have on the ground. You know, I was just going to say, Evan, like what both of my colleagues have failed to mention is that the safety management system, which is now an international standard, is an additional layer of safety oversight above and beyond the inspectors that we have doing this job. So, you know, when we're talking about self-regulation, I think the implication that they've made is that there is no government involvement here, which is patently false. Like, it's just completely not the case.
I don't want to get too far. I don't want to get too far off on that, though. But the question is, if the system is so good, why shouldn't the public be able, unless it harms the commercial interest, and there's been a distinction between commercial interest and compliance, but if there's no compliance, why shouldn't the public be able to see those inspection reports if on whatever issue there's a non-compliance to regulations? What's the problem with that, fundamentally?
Well, I don't think that there is a problem, but we have to make sure that we're following due process with the federal court case, which is what I've mentioned over and over again. This is a matter that is before the courts. But so again, what's at stake here? What's the core of the matter? Is our aviation system safe, and do we have the process in place to make sure that's the case? Yes, absolutely.
Well,
let me hear real quick. Dan Harris and then Wayne Easter, very quickly. Mr. Harris.
Well, I mean, we need to make sure that it stays safe. And the AG in 2008 requested that CATSA put a human resources plan in place in order to fill the short gap that exists. There's 100 inspectors that are missing from the system right now. So the AG made that recommendation in 2008 and then again in 2012. Well, we're 2013 now. 5 years later, we're still 100 inspectors short. So even if we had a good year in safety and aviation next year, there's no way to keep that going as aviation travel grows.
Come on,
well, let's see where the government really stands here, Evan. If they really believe there should be transparency, as they're talking about, then are they going to challenge Porter and challenge the aviation industry and say these reports should be made public? We're saying that they should be made public, and let the public see, and then we can see where the shortcomings are. That's the only way to get to the bottom of these issues.
All right, I got to leave.
So, Michelle, when will the government move on that?
Dan Harris, Michelle Rempel, and Wayne Easter. We'll find out more about this court case, and we'll be following this story on inspection and access to the public as the days roll by. Dan Harris, Michelle Rempel, Wayne Easter, thanks all of you.